Let me begin with the big picture. The killing of Charlie Kirk a few days ago, then back in June, we had a Democratic state lawmaker in Minnesota. She and her husband were killed. Of course, there was the attempted attack on Donald Trump, we all remember last year. What does all this tell us about the current state of political divisions in this country?
Well, it's not good news. There is a rising tide of political violence, and it is not just from one side, as you would think it was if you heard only the president's talk. The governor correctly remembered that there are Democrats who are also being targeted by extremists.
Yeah, and that brings me to my next question. Melissa Hartman, who I mentioned earlier, this Democratic lawmaker from Minnesota. Of course, political violence is never okay. Taking a life is never okay. Leaders on both sides of the aisle have condemned what happened to Charlie Kirk. But do you perhaps see a difference in how the public and political leaders in this country responded to Kirk's killing compared to the murder of lawmaker Melissa Hartman in Minnesota?
Absolutely. President Trump never condemned those killings. He didn't lower flags. He didn't make a big deal of it. He refused to call the Minnesota governor. Whereas by contrast, former President Bush, a Republican, and former President Obama on both killings made it clear that this was wrong. And I think that's very important. And this is a moment when Americans need to come together, because you can't run a democracy with violence. Now, we have been here before. In the late 1960s and early 70s, there was a rising tide of violence, and we recovered from that. So there are ways in which the fever can be broken.
So I guess my next question to you is, how do we go about doing that? How do we break the fever?
Well, I think it is about leadership. And I think it is time for President Trump to reach out to Democrats and make it clear that we are not enemies. We may be political opponents in America, but neither the Republicans nor the Democrats are enemies of each other.
President Trump blamed the radical left for much of the political violence in the country, Professor. And I'm quoting him here. He said, "We have radical left lunatics out there, and we just have to beat the hell out of them." His words, not mine. Does that kind of inflammatory language, which he's also used on his critics, does it add more fuel to the fire?
I think it does. And again, I'd like to draw a contrast. There was a big bombing in 1994 when Clinton was president by two right-wing extremists, killed 157 Americans. And President Clinton called on everyone to reject extremism. He didn't say, this is all the right wing's fault.
Governor Spencer Cox of Utah, I mean, to his credit, he really tried to have a message of unity and humanity when he announced the arrest of the suspect. He also asked a question from the media, from all of us. He said, is this the end of a dark chapter in our history, or is this the beginning of a darker chapter? And he called it a watershed moment. How would you, Professor, answer that question?
Well, I think it is the question to ask. The question is, are we going to turn and embrace further hatred and a spiral of accusations and outrage, or are we going to begin the healing process? And I hope it is the second. I don't see a civil war happening. You'll see some crazy talk of some analysis of a civil war. That's not going to happen, I don't believe. But we need to get out of this death spiral of hatred online and now in violence in person.
And Professor, finally, I have to ask you about another story that was, for the most part, ignored because of what happened with this arrest. Repeated threats at black colleges and campuses that have led to lockdowns. There's a lot of fear. Students are afraid to go to class. How does that fit into the climate of intimidation, violence, and racism in America?
Well, over the last 10 years, there have been a number of attacks by white supremacists on minority populations, whether Hispanic or black. And these threats to historically black colleges are probably people on the far right who are so enraged by what happened in Utah that they have to do something, they have to take action. So they make a cowardly death threat to a black college. I don't know that to be what happened, but that is what I believe happened.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Professor Jeremy Meyer, thank you, sir.
Thank you.